California. The Golden State. Everyone's heard about it, right? Sun, beaches, Hollywood. But today we're going someplace a little different.
Definitely not the California you see on postcards.
Right. We're taking a deep dive into the 1930s, the Great Depression, using this article summarizing a YouTube video to follow one person's trip west.
Talk about a tough time to chase the California dream.
Seriously, I mean, the whole country was struggling. But even then, California still had this pull, this idea of, starting over.
Right, a land of opportunity, even if it meant risking it all just to get there.
Exactly. And this article we found, it really gets into that. Like, it doesn't sugarcoat anything. It starts with the narrator hitching a ride. And the driver, well, let's just say she sounds like a character.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about this driver.
Okay, so picture this. Big hat, feathers, cherries, all this according to the article. Like, full-on Depression-era fashion icon, but also maybe a little eccentric.
Well, people express themselves in different ways.
Yeah.
But you're right, it's not just about the clothes. This was a time when religion was super important for a lot of folks. A way to cope, Find some hope.
And for this driver, hope came with a side of hymns. Apparently, the narrator had to sing for their supper, or rather, their ride, all the way from New Jersey to Texas.
Wow. Talk about an unexpected road trip playlist.
Jesus Loves Me on repeat. You got to admire the dedication to both faith and vocal endurance.
It makes you think about the power dynamics at play, though. This wasn't some fun carpool karaoke session. You're desperate, broke, and your ticket west depends on pleasing this woman and her, shall we say, unique taste in music.
It's a good point. It really shows how little control people had over their own journeys. Speaking of which, our narrator ends up in Texas and gets some, shall we say, interesting advice.
Don't tell me. Someone suggested a stagecoach.
Even wilder, hop a freight train.
Ooh, okay, that's next level.
Yeah.
And a whole lot more dangerous, especially in the dead of winter.
For real. The article talks about freezing temperatures, open boxcars, even having to cross a gorge on foot. Like, we complain about a bumpy bus ride, but this
is intense.
Beyond intense. People were literally risking their lives. Clinging to the tops of trains, crammed into boxcars with barely any room to breathe. And keep in mind, everyone's doing this because they're desperate, looking for something. Anything better.
It's crazy to think about the risks they were willing to take for just the chance of a better life. Absolutely. And it wasn't just the physical dangers. This is where you really see the social impact of the Depression, too. Remember the article mentioning the wild boys of the road?
Yeah, that caught my eye. Sounds like something straight out of a gangster movie.
You'd think so, right? But the reality is way more complicated. These weren't hardened criminals. Mostly it was displaced young men, teenagers even, kids who had to leave home, figure things out on their own because their families just couldn't support them anymore.
Wow, that puts a whole different spin on it. Not delinquents, just kids thrown into a horrible situation. And it's not like things got easier once they were out on the road.
Sadly not. The article mentions our narrator dealing with unwanted advances from another passenger.
Which is just awful, but I guess not surprising, unfortunately.
It's a stark reminder of the vulnerability a lot of people faced, especially women traveling alone. Even in the midst of this mass migration, this shared struggle, there were still dangers.
It's like no matter how bad things are, you always have to be looking out for yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Having your guard up wasn't just about physical safety. It was about protecting what little you had left. Your dignity, your hope.
Heavy stuff. But on a slightly lighter note, our narrator does eventually make it to California.
They did. And immediately started looking for farm work, which I guess makes sense. Got to start somewhere.
Exactly. Though after that journey, I can't help but wonder, was it worth it? Did they actually find what they were looking for? That's the part the article doesn't really say.
Right. That's the big question, isn't it? Did California live up to the hype? We only get that little glimpse of their appraisal, not what came after.
It's so frustrating. But for anyone who's dying to know more, and honestly, that includes me, the article does have a link to that YouTube video.
Bookmarking that for later, for sure.
Me too.
Yeah.
But even without knowing the ending, this whole story, it really gets you thinking, what does it say about us? That even when times are toughest, even when the odds are stacked against us, we still cling to that hope, that idea that maybe, just maybe, something better is waiting around the corner.